Ladies and gentlemen, life is unpredictable. No matter how carefully we plan, how much effort we put into our relationships, or how deeply we invest in the people around us, things will not always go as we wish. Others will misunderstand us. Some will act in ways we cannot comprehend. Conflicts will arise, and no amount of frustration, persuasion, or force will always bring the results we want. This is the nature of life. However, what determines our peace is not the chaos of the external world, but our ability to separate what is within our control from what is not. The mind, when undisciplined, resists this truth. It clings to expectations, demands fairness, and desires control over things that were never within its power. This is why people suffer more from their resistance to reality than from reality itself. They want others to be different, to act according to their own standards, to respond with kindness when they are kind, to be just when they are just. But the world does not work this way. No amount of anger or frustration will change human nature. And so the wise person does not waste energy on what cannot be changed, but instead focuses on their own thoughts, actions, and responses. Imagine a traveler caught in a storm. He can curse the rain, complain about the wind, and demand that the sky clear up. But none of his words will move the clouds. He can try to push against the wind, but it will push back harder. In doing so, he only exhausts himself. The wiser course of action is to accept the storm for what it is, adjust his steps, seek shelter, or find a way forward without resisting reality. In this way, he conserves his strength for what he can influence: his decisions, his emotions, and his actions. This is how we must approach our problems with people. We cannot force someone to understand us if they refuse to listen. We cannot change someone's nature overnight. We cannot demand that people act according to our expectations. But we can control how we respond. We can choose whether we let their actions disturb our peace. We can choose to speak with wisdom instead of reacting with anger. We can choose to walk away from unnecessary conflict or engage with patience and reason. To master this principle, we must begin with deep self-awareness. When faced with difficulty, pause and ask, is this within my control? If the answer is no, then resisting it is pointless. If a person has wronged you, you cannot undo their action, but you can control how you respond. If someone refuses to see reason, you cannot force them to understand, but you can decide whether to argue or walk away. If you are rejected, betrayed, or treated unfairly, you cannot rewrite what has happened, but you can determine whether to dwell on it or move forward. Much of human suffering comes from wishing reality were different rather than working with reality as it is. A person who insults you has power over you only if you allow their words to disturb your mind. A person who betrays your trust controls your emotions only if you give them that power. The more we try to control others, the more frustrated we become. But the moment we shift our focus inward to our own thoughts, actions, and responses, we reclaim our strength. This does not mean passivity or weakness. Acceptance is not surrender. It does not mean tolerating injustice or allowing others to walk over us. Rather, it means choosing where to invest our energy. Instead of wasting time trying to change another person's nature, we redirect that effort towards strengthening our own character. Instead of dwelling on what has already happened, we focus on what we can do now. Instead of engaging in fruitless arguments, we learn to speak only when words will be effective. The person who learns this lesson is unshaken by the storms of life. When others are cruel, they do not become bitter. When others are foolish, they do not waste time in pointless debates. When life does not go their way, they do not despair, because they have trained themselves to focus only on what they can influence. This is freedom, not the illusion of control over the world, but mastery over the self. Emotions are powerful forces. They can cloud judgment, distort reality, and drive people to actions they later regret. A single moment of uncontrolled anger can ruin a relationship that took years to build. Fear can paralyze a person from taking necessary action. Impulse can lead to decisions that create suffering. Those who lack control over their emotions are at the mercy of external events, reacting to life rather than shaping it. True strength is not found in suppressing emotions, but in mastering them, allowing them to exist without being controlled by them. To live wisely is to understand that emotions are natural but must be governed. The wise person does not deny that anger, frustration, fear, or sadness arise within them. Instead, They observe these emotions without being overtaken by them. Just as a skilled rider controls a wild horse, they guide their emotions instead of letting their emotions control them. This is not cold detachment, but a disciplined understanding that emotions are only signals, not commands. Imagine a person insulted in public. The immediate reaction may be rage. The mind screams for retaliation, for words sharper than those received. But what does this reaction achieve? It may provide temporary satisfaction, but in the long run, it escalates conflict. It places control in the hands of another, allowing an insult to dictate one's behavior. The disciplined person recognizes the insult for what it is, just words. They feel the anger but do not let it drive them. Instead, they pause, assess and respond only if it serves a purpose. In doing so, they maintain their power, while the one who insulted them gains nothing. Emotional discipline is not about ignoring feelings, but about choosing how to act upon them. When fear arises, one does not allow it to prevent action but acknowledges it and moves forward anyway. When sadness comes, one does not drown in it but accepts it as part of the human experience, knowing it will pass. When provoked, one does not lash out but steps back, ensuring that their response is guided by reason, not impulse. There is great freedom in this practice. Most people live as slaves to their emotions, reacting impulsively and suffering the consequences. They lash out in anger and regret it later. They allow fear to control them and miss opportunities. They let external events dictate their happiness, never realizing that peace comes from within, not from the outside world. But the person who masters emotional discipline is unshaken. They face the same challenges as everyone else, but they do not allow emotions to rule them. This discipline requires practice. The first step is awareness, observing emotions as they arise without immediately acting on them. Instead of reacting, one must pause and reflect. What is causing this feeling? Is my response necessary? Will it lead to a better outcome? Or am I simply reacting out of habit? This brief moment of reflection is the difference between wisdom and regret. Another essential aspect is perspective. Many emotions lose their power when viewed from a broader standpoint. An insult may feel significant in the moment, but will it matter in a day, a week, a year? A failure may seem devastating, but does it define a person's worth, or is it simply a lesson to be learned? The ability to step back from emotions and see them objectively reduces their intensity. Discipline also requires patience. There will be times when emotions overwhelm, when control slips and mistakes are made. The key is not to be discouraged, but to return to the practice, learning from each failure. Over time, emotional discipline strengthens, and what once provoked anger or fear no longer holds the same power. In the end, emotional discipline is about choosing reason over impulse, wisdom over reaction. It is about understanding that while emotions are inevitable, they do not have to dictate one's actions. The person who masters this art gains not only control over themselves, but a profound sense of inner peace, unshaken by the chaos of the world. Understanding others is one of the greatest challenges in life. People are quick to judge, quick to assume, and quick to form opinions, without truly seeing a situation for what it is. This tendency comes from the mind's desire for certainty and urge to categorize, label, and make sense of the world in the fastest way possible. But the truth is that most conflicts, misunderstandings, and disagreements arise not from reality itself, but from the failure to see it clearly. A person speaks harshly, and the immediate assumption is that they are rude, arrogant, or hostile. But what if they are struggling with unseen burdens? What if they have just lost someone they love? What if they are simply having a difficult day? If one assumes the worst, they respond with anger, escalating a conflict that could have been avoided. But if one seeks to understand, they may find that no conflict was needed at all. This approach does not mean ignoring wrongdoing or excusing harmful behavior. Rather, it means recognizing that every action has a cause. People are shaped by their experiences, their struggles, their fears, and their desires. No one acts without reason, even if their reason is flawed. By taking the time to understand, one gains clarity. Instead of reacting impulsively, they can respond with wisdom. Instead of fueling resentment, they can approach others with patience. One of the greatest mistakes people make is assuming they know the full truth when they only see a fraction of it. Every person's perspective is shaped by their own experiences, but those experiences are limited. What seems obvious to one person may be completely different from another's reality. Two people can witness the same event and interpret it in entirely different ways. This is why judgment, when made too quickly, often leads to error. Consider a disagreement between friends. One person feels slighted, believing the other has acted selfishly. Without seeking to understand, they assume bad intent, allowing anger to grow. But if they take the time to ask, to listen, they may find that their friend had no ill intentions at all. Perhaps they were unaware of the impact of their actions. Perhaps they had their own struggles they were dealing with. In many cases, what appears to be cruelty is simply misunderstanding, and what seems like betrayal is often thoughtlessness rather than malice. Understanding before judgment requires patience. It demands that a person set aside their initial reaction and take the time to observe, ask questions and listen. Most conflicts in life are not battles between good and evil, but between incomplete perspectives. By choosing to understand first, one creates the opportunity for resolution rather than division. This practice also extends to oneself. People are often their own harshest judges, condemning themselves for mistakes without seeking to understand why they acted as they did. They dwell on past failures, assuming they are weak or incapable, when in reality, they were simply doing the best they could with the knowledge they had at the time. If they applied the same patience to themselves that they offer to others, they would find growth rather than guilt. Every person carries their own unseen burdens. Everyone struggles with their own fears, insecurities, and challenges. Recognizing this truth does not mean ignoring wrongdoing, but it does mean approaching others with greater wisdom. When one seeks understanding before judgment, they move through the world with greater clarity, reducing unnecessary conflict and fostering deeper connections. In doing so, they cultivate patience, compassion, and the ability to respond with true wisdom rather than impulse. Ego and pride are among the greatest obstacles to inner peace and wisdom. They distort perception, create unnecessary conflict, and make people slaves to their own emotions. The mind, when ruled by ego, demands recognition, superiority, and validation. It resists criticism, clings to personal narratives, and reacts with anger when challenged. Pride fuels the illusion that one must always be right, always be respected, and always be in control. But this is a fragile way to live, for it makes a person constantly vulnerable to the opinions and actions of others. True strength comes not from feeding the ego, but from letting it go. To detach from ego and pride is to free oneself from the endless struggle for validation. It is to realize that self-worth does not depend on external approval. The wise person understands that their value is not diminished by insult, nor increased by praise. Compliments and criticisms alike are merely opinions, often shaped by the limited perspectives of others. If one bases their happiness on such fleeting judgments, they give power over their emotions to the outside world. But if they detach, they remain steady, neither inflated by praise nor wounded by insult. Pride is often the root of conflict. When two people argue, it is rarely because truth is being sought, it is because ego wants to win. The need to be right overrides the desire to understand. This creates division, for pride does not seek resolution, it seeks dominance. But what is truly gained by proving another wrong? Even if one wins the argument, have they won anything of real value? A person who insists on always being right may win many debates but lose friendships, respect, and peace of mind. Detaching from ego means understanding that being right is not as important as being wise. Sometimes wisdom means letting go of the need to argue. Sometimes it means choosing silence over conflict. Pride also prevents growth. A person ruled by ego resists criticism, seeing it as an attack rather than an opportunity to learn. They cling to their mistakes rather than admit them. They refuse to acknowledge weakness, fearing it makes them lesser. But the wise understand that growth requires humility. No one is beyond error. No one has perfect knowledge. The ability to accept one's flaws, to listen to feedback without defensiveness, and to change when necessary is a mark of true strength. It is not weakness to admit fault, it is wisdom. Ego attaches itself to identity. It makes people believe they are their titles, achievements, or social status. It tells them that their worth is tied to what they own, what they have accomplished, or how they are perceived. But all these things are temporary. Status fades, achievements are forgotten, possessions lose their value. If one's identity is built upon such things, they will forever be chasing something that can never bring lasting fulfillment. Detachment from ego means understanding that true worth is not external, it comes from character, wisdom, and inner peace. Letting go of ego also leads to better relationships. Pride creates distance. Humility fosters connection. The person who is always seeking to prove themselves superior will never truly connect with others, for they see people as competitors rather than companions. But the person who has let go of ego listens more, judges less, and treats others with patience and kindness. They do not feel the need to impress, to dominate, or to seek constant recognition. In doing so, they create relationships built on mutual respect rather than competition. To detach from ego and pride is to choose freedom. It is to no longer be ruled by the need for validation, the fear of being wrong, or the illusion of superiority. A person who masters this is unshaken by insults, unaffected by flattery, and free from the burdens of unnecessary conflict. They move through life with wisdom, humility, and a sense of inner peace that cannot be disturbed by the fleeting opinions of the world. Conflict is an inevitable part of life. No matter how carefully one chooses their words or how much effort they put into maintaining peace, disagreements will arise. People will misunderstand each other, emotions will flare, and perspectives will clash. The natural response to conflict is often frustration, anger, or avoidance. Many see it as a disruption, something that must be resolved as quickly as possible or avoided entirely. But conflict is not merely a problem, it is an opportunity. It is a mirror reflecting one's own weaknesses, an arena for growth, and a teacher of patience, wisdom, and resilience. Every conflict, no matter how small, offers a lesson. It reveals how people react under pressure, how they handle disagreement, and where their emotional discipline is lacking. When emotions rise in the heat of an argument, it is not only the other person's flaws that are exposed, but also one's own. If anger takes over, it is a sign that there is still work to be done in mastering one's emotions. If defensiveness arises, it may indicate that pride is interfering with the ability to listen. If fear prevents one from speaking, it may show that confidence needs to be cultivated. Each reaction is a message, and those who listen carefully will learn more about themselves than any peaceful moment could ever teach them. Conflict also teaches the value of perspective. Every disagreement stems from two different ways of seeing the same situation. If one clings too tightly to their own viewpoint, they miss the opportunity to understand another's. Instead of viewing conflict as a battle to be won, one can approach it as a chance to expand their understanding. Even when another person is clearly wrong, there is still value in hearing them out, for their words may reveal not only their beliefs but their fears, struggles, and motivations. True wisdom comes not from proving one's own point but from gaining insight into the perspectives of others. Patience is another lesson hidden within conflict. It is easy to remain calm when everything is going smoothly, but true patience is tested when faced with disagreement. When someone insults, provokes, or refuses to listen, the instinct is to react, to strike back with sharper words, or to walk away in anger. But these reactions do not solve the conflict, they only prolong it. The person who can pause, breathe, and respond with thoughtfulness rather than an impulse is the one who has mastered themselves. Each conflict presents an opportunity to strengthen this discipline, to train the mind to remain steady even in the face of opposition. Conflict also reveals the nature of relationships. Some relationships crumble under the weight of disagreement, while others grow stronger because of it. A person who listens and seeks to understand even in difficult conversations is someone who values connection over ego. Likewise, those who refuse to engage in destructive arguments show that they value peace over the need to be right. Through conflict, people learn who is willing to communicate, who is capable of growth, and who is only interested in winning. This understanding helps one choose relationships wisely, investing time in those that are built on mutual respect rather than dominance. Even the most difficult conflicts have something to teach. A betrayal teaches the importance of trust and discernment. A misunderstanding teaches the need for clearer communication. A heated argument teaches the necessity of emotional control. If one looks beyond the discomfort of the moment, they will find that every conflict is shaping them, refining their character, and offering lessons that cannot be learned in comfort. The person who learns from conflict becomes stronger, wiser, and more at peace. Instead of fearing disagreements, they welcome them as opportunities to practice patience, to expand their understanding, and to sharpen their ability to navigate the complexities of human interaction. In doing so, they turn obstacles into lessons and adversity into growth, walking the path of wisdom with clarity and purpose. Forgiveness is often misunderstood. Many see it as an act of weakness, as if letting go of resentment means excusing the wrong that was done. Others believe that forgiveness is a gift to the one who caused harm, something given to those who seek it or deserve it. But true forgiveness is not about the other person, it is about freeing oneself. It is not a favor to the wrongdoer, but a release from the burden of anger, resentment, and pain. To forgive is to choose peace over suffering, clarity over bitterness, and strength over the illusion of control. When someone harms us, whether through betrayal, deceit, or cruelty, the natural response is anger. This anger may feel justified. It serves as a form of protest, a refusal to accept the injustice that has occurred. But over time, anger becomes a prison. The mind replays the wrong over and over, keeping the pain alive. Resentment grows, and with it, suffering. The person who caused harm may move on, unaware or indifferent to the pain they left behind, but the one who holds onto resentment continues to suffer. In this way, refusing to forgive is like carrying a heavy stone, believing it punishes the one who caused the pain, when in reality it only weighs down the one holding it. Forgiveness is not about forgetting. It does not mean pretending that the hurt never happened or allowing harmful people to remain in one's life. It is not about trust. Trust must be earned. It is not about reconciliation. Some relationships are best left behind. Forgiveness is simply about releasing the emotional grip that pain has on the mind. It is the recognition that clinging to resentment does nothing but prolong suffering. To forgive is to regain control. When one refuses to forgive, they remain tethered to the past, allowing old wounds to dictate their present emotions. But when they choose to let go, they reclaim their freedom. They are no longer controlled by the actions of another. They decide how they feel, how they think, and how they move forward. This is not an easy process. Forgiveness requires effort, patience, and a willingness to shift perspective. It requires understanding that every person, even those who cause harm, is shaped by their own flaws, fears, and experiences. It does not excuse their actions, but it allows for the possibility that they, too, are human, imperfect, and often unaware of the full impact of their choices. Forgiving is an act of self-care. It is a gift to oneself, a decision to no longer carry the weight of past wrongs. It is a quiet but powerful statement. I will not allow my peace to be stolen by anger. I will not let my future be defined by my past. In choosing forgiveness, one chooses freedom. They walk forward, lighter, unburdened, and in control of their own peace. Forgiveness is not about them, it is about you. It is about choosing peace over pain, wisdom over resentment, and freedom over the chains of the past. By letting go, you do not excuse the wrong, nor do you forget the lesson. Instead, you reclaim your power, refusing to let anger dictate your life. In forgiving, you are not weak, you are strong. You rise above, unshaken by the weight of old wounds, and move forward with clarity, resilience, and the peace that comes from knowing that nothing and no one has control over your heart but you.